Hey guys, how are you? I hope all of you are doing really good. So welcome to Economics of Finance Excellency batch. Okay, so what we have been discussing about in the last lecture, we started with this chapter. One second. We started with this chapter of instruments of trade policy, right? So we discussed about the various tariff that how the government has the various instruments through which they can control the imports and the exports. And basically, when we talk about the control base, the government tries to control the more of imports, right? So whenever the word this tariff is used, it is mostly used in relation to the imports, right? So we discussed about that majorly there are two types of tariff. One is the specific tariff and another one is the ad valorem tariff. Specific tariff is on the unit or the volume, right? And ad valorem is as a fixed percentage of the value. So we discussed all this, the other forms of tariff we started with. And we discussed about the mixed, compound, technical or other tariff and the tariff rate quotas. Now, moving on from here, the other forms, all these are what? All these are which tariffs? These are the tariff measures, that is the price related measures, right? So all this what we are discussing is related to the price related measures. After that we'll come to the non-price related, that is the non-tariff measures, right? So till now what we are doing is the tariff related. Now next is the most favored nation, MFN tariff. Now, MFN tariffs are what the countries promise to impose on the imports from the other members of the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, right? Unless the country is a part of preferential trade agreement like the free trade agreement, MFN rates are the highest that WTO members charge one another. The higher rates can be charged from the non-WTO member countries. Now, what are these? What do you mean by this MFN rates? So let's try to understand what is meant by this MFN rate, that is the most favored nation, MFN rate. Now MFN rate says, let's say there is a WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, right? And there are 4 countries which are the members of the WTO, that is country A, country B, country C and country D, right? So MFN says, the MFN that is the most favored nation says, it is an agreement which says that country A, country B, country C and country D, all these countries decide that this is the maximum rate of import that they will charge from each other, right? Country A says, I will not charge more than 10% import. Country B says, I will also not charge more than 10%. I will also not charge more than 10%, more than 10%. So this is the highest rate that they can charge from the other WTO members. But remember one thing here, that if country A is going to charge 10% from country B, then country A will charge same from C and same from D, right? So the MFN rate will remain same for all the countries within the WTO. Now, if there is a country E, which is a non-WTO country, non-WTO country, let's say there is another country, that is country E. Now this country A says, can I charge 15% from this? Yes. The higher rate can be charged from the country E. Now, another thing that the MFN says, another thing that the MFN is that if there is a preferential trade agreement between A and B, if there is a preferential trade agreement means they say that we will have the free trade agreement, will not charge free trade agreement. That means these countries A and B says that we will not charge anything, any tariff on the imports from each other, right? So in that case, if they have a preferential trade agreement, this is known as preferential trade agreements. That means they are going to give the preference to each other, preferential trade agreement. Though say if there is a preferential trade agreement between the two countries, then that will override the MFN, right? Then they will have to go by the preferential trade agreement rate. Otherwise between the WTO members, there will be the MFN. MFN is basically the highest tariff that they can charge from each other, right? Beyond that, now if they have decided 10%, they will have to charge 10%. They cannot go beyond 10%. Sir, can they charge lower than 10%? Yes, we will come to that. They can charge lower than 10%. So 10% tells us the highest rate that can be charged. That is the agreement between the countries, that we are not going to charge more than 10% amongst the WTO members. From the non-WTO members, you can charge a higher rate, right? So this is what is written here, that MFN tariffs are what the countries promise to impose on imports from other members of the WTO unless the country is a part of preferential trade agreement. That means if the country is a part of preferential trade agreement, in that case, the preferential trade agreement will get the first focus, right? Like the free trade agreement, the MFN rates are the highest that WTO members charge one another, right? The higher rates can be charged from the non-WTO members. From the non-WTO member countries, the higher rates can be charged. Clear? After that, you have the variable tariff. What is variable tariff? The tariff charged to bring the import price of a good up to the domestic support price. Right now, if you want to bring the import prices up to the level of the domestic prices, so that the domestic industry is not negatively impacted, right? So that is the tariff that is known as variable tariff. Variable tariff means it will vary over the time with the domestic prices. With the change in the domestic prices, the tariff on the import will also change. It can change. So that is why it is known as the variable tariff, because we want to protect our domestic industry, right? That is why we are putting this tariff. Now, the next one is the preferential trade. So this is what we were talking about when we discussed this MFN, right? The preferential trade agreement. Now, the preferential tariff is a tariff which is charged at a rate lower than the MFN rate under the preferential trade agreement between the countries. So it is a rate which is much lower than the MFN rate. The two countries can enter into the preferential trade agreement, that there will be no tariff on the import from that country, or there will be a tariff which will be at a very low rate, because these countries are good friends. They want to maintain the good relations. They want to have the good international trade, right? So that is known as preferential tariff. They will say, we will give you the preference. We will give you the preference by buying the goods, by selling the goods at a very low tariff rate, at a very low customs duty rate. So that is what is known as preferential tariff. These agreements are reciprocal. Reciprocal means both the countries will have to decide on that. It is not that one country is going to have the lower rate, other can charge anything. No. If country A decides that I will charge 1%, country B, with country B, the country B will also have to charge 1% only. They cannot charge, okay, you charge 1%, we will charge 10%. No, that is not possible, right? It has to be reciprocal. If you are giving a preference, the other person should also reciprocate the same way, right? Example, the preferential duties in the EU region under which a good moving from one EU country to another is charged the zero tariff, right? European Union. EU is European Union region under which a good moving from one European country to another is charged zero tariff, right? So that is the preferential tariff. Now coming to the next, that is the bound tariff. Bound tariff is the WTO member binds itself with the legal commitment to not charge the tariff over a certain agreed level. The rates are specific to individual products. In this case, the country A says that I will 10% is what it can charge, but country A says I will not charge more than 8% on, it can be on the specific products. If not on all the products, it can be on the specific products where the country A says from country D, I'm not going to charge more than 8%, right? So this becomes my bound tariff. This becomes my bound tariff, right? It has to be lower than MFN rate, because anyhow we say that MFN rate is what? The MFN rate is the rate which is the maximum rate, right? So bound tariff has to be below the MFN rate, right? A WTO member can charge the tariff beyond the agreed level only after the negotiations. However, the bound tariff cannot exceed the MFN rate, right? So what is he saying is they can charge additional rate also. They can charge either say 8.5%, but after the negotiation with country D, whether it's okay or not. See, because all the countries who are the part of WTO, that is the World Trade Organization, they have to go in the sync with each other, right? That is why they are the members of the biggest organization. Right, sir. Then is the applied tariff. Applied tariff is the duty that is actually charged on the imports on MFN basis, right? So this was, they can charge 10%, they can charge 8%, but what is actually they are charging? If they are actually charging 8.5%, this becomes my applied tariff, right? Right? Or they are charging, if let's say they decided that they will charge, one second, they decided that they will charge, instead of 8%, this country A on the specific products charged 7%, right? So this 7% becomes my applied tariff. If it is lower than, what he's saying is, if it is lower than the bound tariff, because if it is higher, then it becomes a bound tariff, then it doesn't remain an applied tariff. So applied tariff is if they are going to apply any tariff which is less than the bound tariff, right, which is actually charged on the MFN basis. On the MFN basis means on the maximum rate is MFN rate, right? They are a part of the WTO and the maximum rate is the most favored nation rate. Applied rate can differ from the bound rate provided it is lower than the bound rate, because if it is higher than the bound rate, then it will become a bound rate, sir, right? It will not be an applied rate. If it is lower than the bound rate, then it is what? It is an applied tariff. So basically what is there? There is a sequence of things. The first we have the maximum rate is the MFN rate. The maximum rate is the MFN rate. Less than MFN rate, you will get what? You will get the bound rate, right? You will get bound rate. And what actually you are charging, you can actually be charging less than the bound rate. You can actually be charging less than the bound rate. We are going like this. So that becomes your applied rate. That becomes your applied rate. And in between anywhere you can have the preferential trade agreement also. Preferential trade agreement. So if the preferential trade agreement is there, it will override everything, sir. Then that agreement will be applicable, right? Then that agreement will be applicable, that will override each and everything. Clear? Right, sir. Then is the escalated tariff. Escalated tariff is the system whereby the nominal tariff rates for the imported finished goods are more than the nominal rate for the imported inputs and raw material. So he says, what is there? He says, if there is a raw material, the import tariff on rate at raw material will be 6%, let's say, and as you keep on adding value to that raw material, when you are converting this raw material to FG, right? When you are converting this raw material to FG, what you are doing in the process is, here you will say value addition. Obviously, sir, there is a value addition. We have studied the costing also, right? When you are converting your raw material into finished goods, you will be selling the finished goods. You are adding the value to the raw material so that it becomes saleable, isn't it? So when you have converted it into FG, it says as you are adding the value, to the raw material, this rate will keep on increasing. So at FG, it will become at the rate of 10%, right? So it will keep on increasing, sir. Clear? So that is the escalated tariff. That nominal tariff rates for the imported finished goods are more than the nominal rates for the imported inputs and raw material. The tariff on a product increases as the product moves through the value added chain. This forces the developing countries to remain the suppliers of raw material. Why? Because the tariff on the raw material is less, right? And the developing countries who are already struggling with their economy, who are in the developing stage, the lower tariff items will be the best for them, isn't it? For them, the lower tariff items will be the best. That is why they say they will remain the suppliers of raw material. Next is prohibitive tariff. It is the tariff which is set so high that no imports will come into the country, right? For any item which we do not want that this item should be imported into the country, there will be prohibitive tariff. That this tariff, let's say we impose the tariff at the rate of 80%. Sir, who will buy? Who will buy? The cost will be so high, so there will be no imports when we totally want to ban the imports. So import subsidies. Now, what is import subsidy? Sorry, subsidy is not a tariff, right? Subsidy is not a tariff, so that is why it is known as negative import tariff. So an import subsidy is simply a payment per unit or as a percentage of the value for the importation of the good, that this good is very good for the economy, and if you are going to import that good, we will get subsidy to you. Instead of charging the tariff from you, we will give subsidy to you. That is what the government is saying. That is why it is known as negative import tariff, right? It is known as negative import tariff. After that, the last is the tariff as a response to trade distortions. Now, what is trade distortions? Generally used when the foreign country is engaged in unfair trade practices. That is what is known as trade distortions. The unfair trade practices such as dumping, export subsidies, etc. Right? It aims to offset the distortion caused due to the unfair trade practices. Distortion caused by unfair trade practices means that the importing country is badly hit, right? This is often known as trigger price mechanism, right? So what are the various tariffs in that? Anti-dumping duty. The dumping refers to the selling the goods in the foreign country at a prices lower than the domestic markets or at a prices below the full average cost, right? Anti-dumping duties are tariff to offset the effects of dumping. These duties are justified when the domestic industry is seriously injured or due to the dumping. Let's say there is country A, and there is country B, right? So this country A is making a particular product, that is PA. This is product A, this country is making. Now what this country is doing? The country says that now country B is not that much interested in the product A, but country A says we want to sell this product at any cost, right? Otherwise what will happen? This product A will get destroyed. This is not going to be wholly consumed in country A. So what country A is doing? Country A says we will sell at very, very, very low prices. Now country B, the domestic market is already having that product. They say we are sufficient with whatever the demand we are getting. We are the sufficient producers, right? But country A says no, I will sell, right? So country A, this is selling at very low prices, right? They're sending huge units, huge volumes at very, very, very low prices to country B. Now what will happen, sir? Now at this particular point of time, the domestic market of the country B will be badly hit. The domestic market of the country B will be badly hit because of the low prices. Clear? Because of the low prices, this country B's domestic market will be badly hit. So that is why they put import tariffs on this. Import tariff on this. What country A, other method that country A can adopt is they give export subsidies to this, the manufacturer of PA, they will give the export subsidies that you do export. We will give you subsidies. We are not going to charge anything. Instead, we are going to pay you from our pocket. We give you export subsidies. Export it to country B. Export it to country B. We do not need this product, right? At a low prices, obviously, when this manufacturer of PA in the country A, he is getting the export subsidies, right? The price will be very less than the manufacturing cost will come down. So he can sell at very low prices. Again, the domestic market of the country B will be impacted, right? So this is what is anti-dumping duty. They try to dump this product in the country B at a very low prices, which negatively impacts the domestic market. Then is the countervailing duties. Sometimes the prices of the imported goods are artificially low due to the subsidies or the tax concessions enjoyed by the exporters in their home country. That is what I just told you, that the person who is manufacturing PA in country A, if he is enjoying the export subsidies, then he will keep the prices at a very low price, right? To counter this export subsidies, the import tariffs are put in the country B. This is known as countervailing duties, right? The countervailing duties are the tariff used to offset the artificially low import prices, right? The duties depend on the extent of export subsidies and the government benefits enjoyed by the exporters in their home country. What is the export? Accordingly they say we will put the countervailing duties, we will put the import duties on that, so that the prices are not too low. Clear? So that the prices are not too low. So these were all the tariffs. These were all the tariffs. And as I told you that there are lots and lots of tariffs. So what you have to do is you have to go through all the tariffs once again. You have to revise this tariff 3-4 times, right? Mixed tariff is there, compound, technical, tariff, tariff rate quotas, most favored nation, variable tariff, preferential tariff, bound tariff, applied, escalated, prohibitive, import subsidies, tariff as a response to trade distortion. So this question on anti-dumping and countervailing has been asked in the past also, right? So these small things are important. Just revise it multiple times, you will be able to remember everything, right? Then the effects of the import tariff, adverse effect, the creation of obstacles to the trade and decrease the international trade. Obviously, if the import tariff is too high, the international trade will be impacted, right? The result in the loss of consumer surplus for the domestic consumers due to the higher price of the imported goods and the consequent lesser consumption. So consumer doesn't have too many choices now, right? If the import tariffs are high, the imports will be less, the consumer will not have too many choices, right? Or either if the consumer wants to buy the imported good, he will have to buy at a higher price, at a very high price, and in that case what will happen, sir? The pocket of that consumer will be impacted. Create the trade distortions and discourage the efficient production in the world. Trade distortions will be there, efficient production will be impacted, right? Obviously, sir, when there are tariffs, the people don't want to import the goods, people don't want to export the goods. There will be no, I can say, not free trade. The free trade is anyhow not good, but the easy trade, right? Positive impacts: encourage the consumption and production of the domestic products, right? It encourages the people that you should be using more of domestic products. Like the campaign here, the Made in India campaign, what was it? The imports were made costlier so that people are make use of the domestically manufactured goods, even if they are 1 or 2 rupee costlier. But you should respect your country, you should respect the work of the people of your country, your fellow countrymen, and you should buy these domestic goods, right? We should not be fully dependent on the imported goods, that they are so cheap, we will go after them. No, we will not be doing that, right? So results in the increase in the producer surplus, at the domestic producers can charge the higher price and the foreign competition is reduced. Yes, there is no foreign competition. If the imports are less, the domestic producers can charge the fair price for their product, right? They don't have to reduce the prices too much because of the imports. More output by the existing firms and the entry of the new firms to reap the higher profit results in rise in the domestic employment. The employment will increase, obviously, sir. If there is a demand for a product and for that product the imports are very less, what will happen, sir? The firms will have to manufacture more, or the new firms will be set up, which will increase the employment, right? The government revenue increases due to the tariff imposition. As I told you in the last lecture also, that whatever the tariffs they are charging, that is the government revenue. This is an indirect tax, right? So it will increase the government revenue. So these were all the tariff measures, that is the price related measures, right? The next that we'll be doing is the non-tariff measures, that is the NTMs. These are the hidden or the invisible measures that interfere with the trade. Now these are not directly related to the price. These are the hidden or the invisible measures. These are the indirect routes that are adopted by the government to control the trade. Includes the policy measures other than tariffs, other than the price related measures that can have the economic effect on the international goods trade. It changes either the quantity traded or the prices or the both, but in the indirect way, not the direct. The tariff on the in case of the tariffs, we are imposing the tariffs directly. That is a price measure. We say pay 10% of the value. We say pay 3,000 rupees, pay 2,000 rupees on the volume. No, in that case, in the NTMs, we are not going to do that. We are going to indirectly control the quantity or the prices of the imports. How we'll be doing that? The NTM measures, we'll study about that, right? So NTMs, all the measure, policies, regulations which change the conditions of international trade. It is not changing the price. what we are importing, it is changing the conditions of international trade in such a way that the imports will be reduced, exports will be increased or as required, right? The NTMs are different from the non-tariff barriers. Now, he says the non-tariff measures are different from the barriers. The barriers is when you want to totally prohibit the thing. The measures is when you want to reduce the quantity being imported of that thing, right? NTB, that is the non-trade tariff barriers, prevent or reduce the import and has the narrow scope. It is narrow scope, right? It is not a wider scope. Only few items that you can totally prevent, totally prohibit, or you can reduce it to a very low level of that, right? That is, you are creating the huge barriers, but that has a narrow scope. For every product, you cannot do that, right? But NTMs, they induce the people to use the domestic product and has a wider scope. So NTM is an indirect way. You are not directly prohibiting or reducing the imports. What you are doing is you are encouraging the people of your country to use the domestic product. A very great example of this is Made in India campaign. So what Made in India campaign? It was a non-tariff measure. The government says we are not going to impose any extra tariffs on the imports, but what they are doing is they are encouraging the people to use the domestic products. What will happen? The impact will be that people will buy less of imported products. The imports will automatically reduce. That is the best example of the non-tariff measure, right? Made in India. They are encouraging people. They are not saying to other countries, do not import. They are not imposing the import tariffs. But what they are doing is they are changing the conditions of import by encouraging the people that you have to buy from the domestically produced goods. So they are changing the conditions which will ultimately impact the imports, right? So as per WTO agreement, the NTMs are allowed under certain circumstances. That is, the non-tariff measures are allowed as per the World Trade Organization also. So basically, the non-tariff measures are divided into two parts. One is the technical measures, another one is the non-technical measures, right? So we'll discuss it in the next lecture now. What are the technical measures? Sanitary and phytosanitary measures are there. Then technical barriers to trade are there. Then non-technical measures are there. Types of non-technical import quotas are there. Licensing, price control measures, financial measures, right? So all these are non-tariff measures. Then export related measures will also be studied, that how because till now what we have been studying about is we have been focusing majorly on the imports, right? But they say that when we talk about the instruments of trade policy, it is for both the imports and exports. The international trade contains both the imports and the exports. So we'll study something about the exports a little bit, but majorly it is the imports that we are trying to control, right? So in the next lecture, we'll continue with the non-tariff measures and we will try to complete this chapter in the next lecture, right? So see you guys in the next lecture. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, keep studying, keep sharing. Thank you so much.